Hello, my name is Justin Roig. I'm a freshman going to sophomore year geography urban studies major. And today we'll be looking at my final four from Mercators to Mashups, which will be mapping out community gardens in Philadelphia. And we'll be discussing what kind of communities you'll find them in and the patterns that we see in that regard. The city of Philadelphia is home to around some 400 community gardens. Since the beginning of deindustrialization, people, wealth, and resources have left many working class neighborhoods such as Kensington, Germantown, and others. Many of these neighborhoods are what we would consider food deserts, which is a phenomenon that disproportionately affects working class people, people of color especially. In Philadelphia, it is estimated that more than 16% of the households suffer from food insecurity, according to the school district. And in 2018, the city had a poverty rate of about a quarter of the population living beneath the poverty line, making Philadelphia the poorest big city in the United States. Community gardens in Philadelphia came as a response to that neglect, to the vacant lots, and to the rising food insecurity that people across the city were facing. Since then, the community gardens have been doing their part to try and meet the needs of the neighborhoods they are a part of. So why aren't community gardens are where they are? If we look at the map at a citywide scale, we're going to see the kind of neighborhoods that they're in. We see one in Germantown, we see one in Tacony, Olney, and we see a high concentration of North Philadelphia in South and Southwest and West Philadelphia. What do these communities all have in common? They're all post-industrial communities. They're all post-industrial neighborhoods. They're all neighborhoods that used to be centered around jobs that are not there anymore. And for that, we're going to compare two neighborhoods in particular. First, we're going to start here in Center City at Fittler Square. And well, first we'll look at the Central Business District. Here we see there are no community gardens. You're not going to see a community garden on Market Street. That land was always, it's very clearly densely packed. That land was always going to be more valuable even in the bad old days as an office building or store or train station or what have you. Where we do see community gardens in Philadelphia that are in Center City, they're located in parks for the most part. We see one over here in Fittler Square in a park. Fittler Square is a more higher income neighborhood. The people in the neighborhood here, the difference being is that they are not relying on a community garden as a source of food. If there's no community garden, they're going to be okay. They're still going to have access to food. These people have higher income brackets. They live in a wealthier neighborhood. They have more access to those resources. So when we talk about patterns, what kind of neighborhoods have community gardens and what kind of neighborhoods don't, the class and economic factor is the main determining factor in that. Now let's compare Fittler Square with Norris Square in Kensington. Kensington was the center of the textile manufacturing in Philadelphia. At one point employing 70,000 people. By the 70s, employs about 5 to 10,000 people. That's a very big economic hit. So when we look at Kensington, we can look at the garden that I go to and see there's a lot more vacant land here. The garden is located on reclaimed land where people used to live and work. And Las Parcelas Community Garden, right up American Street, where many of the factories were, came as a response in 1990 to a federal drug aid, which targeted the neighborhood because it was the center of the drug epidemic. It was where the original neighborhood coined as the Badlands. And the ladies of the neighborhood took it upon themselves to tend to the lots and make safe green spaces for the community and for the children of the neighborhood. And that name, Las Parcelas, is a cultural indicator. It indicates it's a nod, obviously, because of the people who live in Norris Square, who are mostly Puerto Rican. So gardens often reflect the space and place that they are located in. Again, and when we see patterns here, we can look at Sankofa Community Farm in Southwest Philadelphia, where there's a lot of West African people, and there's just a large Black community as well, particularly in the city of Philadelphia. So again, when we look at there are social conditions that create community gardens, the kind of neighborhood that needs it. So that we very much see patterns here, with some exceptions, of course. But there are patterns of what kind of neighborhoods have community gardens. Whilst Philadelphia is home to some 400 community gardens, only 18 as of March of 2023 are registered with the city. This is mainly due to the fact that most gardens are located on squatted land, owned by several owners ranging from private developers to the city to the state level. The sheriff's sale has been the main threat to these community gardens staying on the land that they occupy, since it's the sheriff's department's responsibility to auction off that vacant land. This often leads to conflict between the purchasers and the land stewards who took it upon themselves to clean and maintain those lots for many years. So now we're just going to discuss how I created the map in the conclusion. So I created the original layer of the map using the city's registered community garden database, which is the 18 community gardens I referenced before, and mapped out the rest of it myself with the gardens in Kensington and Sankofa Community Garden. The link to the database is right there. Whilst I focused on the Kensington area, the scale I chose for the assignment was citywide, and that was to show the patterns that we see with what kind of neighborhoods have community gardens and how that's replicated, and even some of the differences, like Fittler Square, for instance. The features of the map the features I mapped were the locations of the gardens themselves for this reason. In my research of this topic, I learned how community gardens were often tools of resistance of survival for many working class communities of color. Philadelphia is unique in being the poorest big city in the United States in many ways, especially this regard. It makes sense we would have so many community gardens due to the high food insecurity faced by groups, working class people, people of color that make up a majority of the city. There's a reason we see these patterns of where gardens are located. I cannot stress enough how much the social factors determine this. In a city where the geography and landscape is ever changing from economic factors, from development, what have you, the future of these spaces as they exist today is still to be determined. We'll see in how many years how many community gardens will be left. With that said, that was my final from Mercators to Mashups, and I hope I kept it within a reasonable time. Thank you very much.